And now to discuss further the extraordinary events in America, I'm joined by Associate Professor Brendon O'Connor of the US Studies Centre at the University of Sydney. Welcome back.
Happy to join you.
Well, we just heard then about what's going to happen from a market point of view in the next day or two. But as somebody who studies the US, let's just look at it, because we had you in a couple of weeks ago. It's pretty well panned out, as you said. It'd go to the wire, but it'd have a happy ending. Any surprises, winners and losers out of what we're seeing at the moment? Well, firstly, we expect it to go through, don't we?
Yes, I think it's guaranteed.
Right.
The Senate was the easy part. That's where the adults live in US politics. The old-timers, those have been there for 40 years.
Are in control now.
Yeah, I mean, the Young Turks in the House of Representatives, particularly some of these Tea Party-aligned people, they've won the debate. They're the big winners out of this debate, but some of them don't realise it because they didn't quite get nirvana where they wanted to go. So there's been, I think, quite a movement in the focus of US politics on to this debt crisis rather than jobs or stimulating the economy, and that's, a big win if you think that's the most important issue. I don't think it's the most important issue. I mean, it's an important issue, but I think getting the US economy growing, tackling jobs is probably a more important issue, and you've got to see them all together. And I think that's been the tragedy of this debate, that one part of the picture has been isolated and focused on in a sort of blinkered way, and it may actually lead to solutions which are detrimental to the other parts of the economy.
And that's the key, isn't it? Because we saw those growth figures out last week. I mean, it's disastrous for the US. I mean, this recovery has stalled. They've got a huge problem with employment, and we've diverted attention to the bigger debt problem, but I'm assuming out of this solution, we're not going to see, there's nothing there to kickstart the economy or for jobs growth. In fact, quite the opposite, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, these people have held the economy to some extent hostage on their belief system, and their belief system might be described as kind of debt fundamentalism. These people are serious debt hawks, and the bigger picture is, of course, well, how did the United States get into that debt? Part of it's to do with fighting foreign wars, but part of it's to do with the bank bailouts of in 2008 and other problems that it had to, in some ways, buy its way out of. So I think there's been a lot of sort of economic amnesia in the Republican debate.
We suffer from that here among the commentators, can I tell you? Yes. It's common.
Yeah, but I mean, it's remarkable how successful I think the Republicans have been forcing the issue. In some ways, the deal was sort of, the pack was sort of stacked in their favour, because without an agreement from the House Republicans, Obama couldn't do anything. He couldn't raise the debt ceiling by himself. He was in some ways totally dependent on that group. And so he's forced through a deal which I think is credit to him, but his supporters, I think, will be bitterly disappointed.
Yeah, now this is what I wanted to get down to. You said the Tea Party probably are winners even if they don't recognise it yet. In that sense, then, you would think that Obama's a loser. It was only, 1 in 2 Democrats voted for this. Where does it leave his presidency and the Democrats going into next year's presidential election?
One of the great sort of lines out of this was a Democrat who said that this was a sugar-coated Satan sandwich, this deal.
Satan sandwich, that's a nice one. We have another word, but that's good.
There was a terrible thing for, I think, some Democrats, because it was accepting these cuts that were probably to discretionary funding of roads, infrastructure programs, school repairs, and that's where you could probably employ some people who have been, fairly long-term unemployed or doing it hard in the last few years.
School repairs, we had an entire stimulus package on school repairs, didn't we?
Some of the schools that you see in the United States need some repairing, and roofs leaking, this kind of thing. So very basic things that need to be done. I think this package will make that harder.
Because you've got really an infrastructure crisis in that country. I mean, bridges are falling down. It's terrible. Yeah, and I bet the old military, the defence spending, didn't get the cuts it needed.
There's a little bit of defence spending cuts in there. That was the bit that Obama pushed into the deal, I think, late in the day. They're not major cuts, but those will be on the table later this year. There'll be discussions of major cuts. Defence has been a sort of sacred cow for the Republicans. They'll want to cut most other things before they cut defence. So there's still a lot of detail to be worked out, but I think the Republicans have largely, as I said, won the debate. Obama comes out of this looking, I think, for moderate Americans as the person who at least can pull things together as a deal maker. Yeah, he's got to take some credit for that. But those who supported him very wholeheartedly in 2008, well, I think many of his most enthusiastic supporters will think this is just another sign that this guy isn't a transformative.
No action.
Yeah, that he isn't a transformative president, that he isn't a president of really serious change in the United States, that he's a kind of business as usual president, that he's steering the ship in a fairly similar direction to his predecessors.
But having said that, while this debt deal gets us through the crisis of next year, as in before the presidential election, whatever party gets in, it's still there. The huge problem's still there to be addressed. I mean, how long can they keep putting it off?
Yes, well, the fundamentals are an ageing population, a very, very large amount of money being spent on Medicare and forms of medical coverage for America's ageing population, and this unwillingness on the Republican side to raise taxes on the most wealthy. What Obama has in his pocket and in his favour, and the Democrats have, is at the end of 2012 the Bush tax cuts will be up for renewal, and the president can veto. Even if he's not elected in 2012, at the end of the year he'll still be president, and he'll be able to veto the extension of those tax cuts. So where the Republicans held the Trump cards in this debt debate, the Democrats at the end of next year on taxes will hold the Trump cards.
And we don't have to go through this nail-biting finale, as I call it, for how long do you think?
18 months.
18 months. So definitely past the next election, and depending what happens, it's a crystal ball. You wouldn't know what we're going to go through again on this, do we?
Yeah, I mean, this should have been fought out in the budget debates earlier this year. You shouldn't have had this unsavoury debate about paying your foreign creditors at this time of the year.
As that famous comedian Jon Stewart said, it's like the Chinese with a repo man, and we're just about to hide the car around the corner as they come to collect it. Just one quick thing on it. The headlines say the damage has already been done. Is there long-term damage from this, or is it just get us to the next one, wait till the next crisis?
A little bit of credibility has been chipped off again. The United States has shown that it's willing to play politics with what should just be an automatic decision. If you've got a debt, you should pay it. If you're a government, you've got a debt, you've got nowhere to hide, so you have to pay it. So I think there was a chipping away at American credibility because they politicised what was really an economic issue, an issue that shouldn't have been as politicised as it was. And I think creditors will say, well, we're lending you money on good faith, and then you're going to have a decision in your Congress about whether you're going to pay us. So I think there is some damage there.
Okay, well, thank you very much for talking to us again, making sense of what is a nonsensical situation. Associate Professor Brendon O'Connor, US Studies Centre, University of Sydney. Time for a short break. Stick around because we'll be crossing to Kalgoorlie for all the fun and games there at the annual Diggers and Dealers Conference.